Are you one of those people that thinks that you have to do everything on your own? You have this nagging feeling that if you ask for help from other people, you are in some sort of way becoming a burden to them. Are you one of those people that has to do everything by yourself? If so, this video today is going to help you because you're going to be able to understand that while it may seem like you may be nagging other people, you are in fact giving that person a gift and you're allowing them to operate in their gifts. In today's conversation, we'll take a look at what may get in the way of you asking for help, the impact of what happens when you don't ask for help, and then the possible solutions, the things that you can do, who you need to become in order for those challenges to now become breakthroughs, not necessarily breakdowns. I'm not going to ask you to follow or subscribe, none of that yet. If you find the value, go ahead and do so. So let's begin. Number one, for me, for such a long time being a guy, this idea of asking for help seemed foreign. And speaking with other men, being in the industry that I'm in, it happens way too often where we as men, in some sort of way, it seems like we feel we're inferior if we ask for help. I remember when I was super young, I must have been maybe 9, 10 years old, and I was freshly into the country. I'm from Colombia originally, and we were going to Atlantic City, New Jersey. We get there, perfect, have a great time. On the way back, we get lost. We get lost bad. Like we end up in the middle of Philadelphia bad. We're going over a bridge and we all look at each other and we're like, hold on, this isn't right. Now, at the time, I didn't know English. I was freshly new into the country. It's my mom, my dad, my grandma, my cousin, myself, and another aunt. And we're all looking at each other like, uh-oh, what's going on here? Now, in pure man mode, my father refused to ask for help until we had to. Because at this point, it was like 2 o'clock in the morning. And this is the time before GPSs were a common thing, by the way. Think about that. This is the time when we had maps. And I remember my mom having sheets of paper and she was looking at them, but we were no longer en route in any sort of way. So we had to stop and ask for help. I remember crying. I remember being in the state of fear about why won't my dad just ask for help? If all we got to do is stop at a gas station, we'll be able to get home sooner rather than later. But no, again, he didn't. You know, I'll never do something like that. Ha ha ha. I did. I've done that multiple times. Lauren and I are taking a trip and we get sidetracked, we get lost. Now, luckily, we now have GPSs where we can just rely on the technology to get us there. But there have been times where the technology is out of reach. We're in a place where there is no signal. And it's in those moments where we're in a space of, uh-oh. Remember being up in the mountains in North New York. We're up by close to Albany and it's about to be maybe like 11 o'clock at night. It's pitch dark. There's a big storm coming in. I remember the GPS going blank and saying signal lost. And I look at her and in my mind, I'm like, uh-oh, I hope that we don't have to stop and ask for help because I don't know if I will. Externally, I'm like, we'll be good. No problem. We're going to be able to get there safe and sound. Now, luckily, once we went over an overpass, it was no problem. We got signal back and we were able to get to our destination. But again, you start to see the seed was still there. Internally, I hope that we don't have to stop and ask for help. So why is that? Why is it that for most people, we're so apprehensive to ask for help? It almost seems like it makes us in some sort of way less than. And this is the reason why most of us are going around through life, not necessarily lost in the sense of driving a car, but lost in the sense of purpose. Maybe we're not doing the things that actually motivate us and inspire us. Maybe our relationship is actually going down the drain and we have no clue how to make it better. Maybe our health keeps getting worse and worse. Doesn't matter what you eat. It doesn't matter what you do for exercise. Something doesn't seem to be working. And this is where we take a step back and we explore, number one, what is getting in the way? Because in order for us to step into what could be, we first must be real with what is. So let's take a look at what are the things that really hold us back from asking help from others. And I like to take a look at it. For me, my brain works in really kind of like you're human. So my brain works in patterns. 3s and 5s are ways in which I like to break things down on so my brain remembers it easily. We're going to take a look at 3 things that hold us back and then 3 things that we can do instead. Number 1, we take a look. What may be holding us back in seeking help? And this is one of those things that as humans, we're continuously walking around with these, not knowing that we're wearing them. It's these things that get in the way of us actually being able to see reality. And what these things are, it's the stories and the narratives around us. See, we believe that what we believe is truth. But really what we got to start to understand is that what we think is truth is only truth because we believe in it. Oh, slow down. What we think is truth is only truth because we believe in it. Now, it's a big conversation because we start to take a look. Okay, so if that is truth, which just explore, is my belief of my reality the same thing as your reality? I'll ask it to you this way. Have you watched a movie lately where maybe your partner or a friend loved it, but you hated it? Or maybe you read a book and you're like, wow, I love this book. This is one of my favorite books, only to have another friend tell you, wow, that book was terrible. I didn't like it at all. Or maybe to make it more real, you have people around you telling you that that dream that is knocking at your heart is exactly what you should be doing, but internally you're afraid. These stories and these narratives come about totally subconsciously and unconsciously. We pick things up as we go throughout life. And the things that we pick up, we start to put them on. Eventually, instead of us being able to see ourselves for the truth of who we are, we start seeing ourselves for the things we put on. And instead of being able to see the authenticity, the power, the boldness, the uniqueness that you are, we start to see the facade, the pretense, the yeah, but they're so much better than I am. They've done it for so much longer than I have. These stories and these narratives get in the way. So we must first start to understand, okay, is what I'm looking at right now and what I'm saying about what I'm seeing, is that actually reality or is it just a narrative and a story? And this is really a supportive, this is a transformative tool that will help you step forward in life in a completely new way. In the realm of seeking support, some people that I speak with, actually, I'd say the majority of people I speak with around seeking help from others, they say one thing continuously. It's universal, and maybe you feel it too. People say, I just don't want to be a burden to others. I know for me, that was there before. But luckily, through some coaching and development, I was able to see that I am actually not getting in the way of people at all. I'm giving them a space for them to be more closely connected to me. So the narrative, the story of me being a burden to somebody else because I'm seeking help was not true. And this is typical. We see it all throughout the world. We know that people could use help. You right now may know somebody that could use help, but they're not asking for it. And when somebody doesn't ask for help, it's like trying to get something from someone that they don't even know they have nor need. So to be present to, okay, am I right now living my life in the context of seeking for help under a narrative that is in some sort of way counterintuitive or counterproductive to what I could be living like life as? Narratives, stories. The moment that we start to get present to the stories is the moment we can start to get away from them. And in that, we start to live in a completely new experience of life. So, number one, stories. Number two, judgment. And it goes right in line with number one, the stories. Because maybe you've been in a situation where somebody gives you a look and your stories go off and you say, wow, that person must not like me. I'll tell you this. There was a time when I was dancing. I was dancing for a hip hop company. And I remember walking into this competition, and me, I never grew up dancing professionally. I grew up moving, which is a distinction between dancing and moving. People always said, you're great at dancing. I say, no, I'm good at moving. There are people that dance through numbers. Over time, I've been able to learn that, but it wasn't something intuitive to me. The people I was dancing with have been doing it for 20 plus years. I hadn't even been alive for more than 25 doing this. So as I'm stepping into this competition with these people that are professionals in their craft, I remember looking around and people will look at us, you're walking into a competitive space. So there's going to be people looking and doubting and people looking and judging. So I look and I see this group looking at all of us and I make eye contact with this one guy. And immediately I'm like, oh no, I have no idea who he is. Never met him before. But my narratives started going off. I started to think, oh my gosh, how am I here? I shouldn't be here. To make matters worse, the competition goes on. This guy's a phenomenal breakdancer. He's spinning on his head, doing everything, windmills, like whatever you think of breakdancing, this guy was doing. So now I'm even much more self-conscious about this thing. Now the judgment and the fear start to kick up even more. The funny thing to this whole thing is, once the competition was over, I went up to him, started speaking with him. I never seen somebody do what he was doing. I'd seen it on videos, but I never seen it being done in person. And I started speaking with him. I started talking to him. Long story short, he was actually telling me that they all looked at us when we first walked in because we were actually the only group where the majority was white people, except for me. It was me and somebody else that were of the minority, quote unquote. Everybody else there was in some sort of way minority, whether it was black or Hispanic. That's why they looked at us. And they were paying us respect for us being there. I think we're in the Bronx, either the Bronx or Brooklyn, one of those, so I can't remember exactly. But in my mind, I'm like, what am I doing here? Judgment, fear, stories, narratives. Meanwhile, the reality is this group was acknowledging us for being there as the group with the most amount of white people. How funny, how amazing. To this day, I'm in connection with this guy. So if we allow the judgment and the fear to be the ones that drive us, we're going to not want to seek help from others. Because again, the inferiority complex seems very real. It's not that it is real, it seems very real. We think that if we ask for help, we're in some sort of way worse. And again, this fear and this judgment is typically coming from something that happened in our past, something we've seen other people do, and the kicker and most confronting, we may be the ones that are actually judging the most. So when we are in communication and we meet somebody and we start to feel that level of judgment, is it possible that there is no judgment coming from them? The one that's truly judging is you. And this is where, again, for us to take full responsibility of this is where we start to step into a whole new level of possibility, whole new level of being. And as we step into this whole new level of being, we can tap into our true calling, our true identity, allowing ourselves to be able to move into where we're supposed to be. Okay, so we have 1, narrative stories. 2, fear and judgment. 3, this is the kicker of them all. This is the one that sent some people dethroned. This is the one that makes the biggest impact in people's lives. This is the one that really holds people back the most. And it actually encompasses the previous 2. And it encompasses why so many people are not even open and willing to connect with others. It really encapsulates what we as a society are experiencing as a whole in general, not everybody, of course. And the third thing that stops people from being open to seek support and ask for help is pride. Again, it connects with the last 2 because in some sort of way in our society, and I get it, we've grown up with what we're doing here. You're watching somebody on a screen and you see this right here, but you don't see the light over here. You don't see the clothes that I still got to iron right over here. So you may be seeing everything like it's really in place, but you have a light over here, you have lighting over here, you have clothes over here, and you have this setup over here with mics and everything. You don't see that. But because of that, we start to think that what we're seeing on the screen is the totality of everything, but it's not. And then we show up as if everything is perfect. It's not. The moment we can be real with where we're at is the moment we can start to step into a whole new possibility of living. If we can really step into that level of understanding that when we're proud, we may look good, we may sound good, but if those things are not coming from a place of authenticity, there's going to be no wind behind them. There's not going to be anything pushing it forward. When we can start to really step into a new level of presence, where we understand that we could be proud of what we do, we could honor and respect the effort and the time that we put into things, but we don't boast. We don't puff ourselves up, because the moment we do so, we're now giving glory to something else other than where it's truly coming from. We get caught up in the world of I did this. And while right now I am taking this action of speaking into a camera and into a microphone about things that I've learned, I'm not the one that's doing this. There's something much bigger moving. But that's because I've been able to put my pride to the side. And it's an ongoing process. Literally, moment to moment, recognizing and realizing that I, of my own two hands, am very incapable. Of my own stature, very limited. And I mean that literally. We have dishes on the top of our shelves in our kitchen I can't reach. So literally, by my stature, I'm limited. Figuratively, if I'm only relying on what the human can do, I'm leaving out so much potential. There are so many things beyond my control. There are so many things happening behind the scenes. But because of pride, we get in the way. And I mentioned before, the devil, he was cast down from heaven because of pride. It was when pride set in his heart to be above the creator that he got slapped on earth. And this pride, unfortunately for most of us, is what gets in the way the most. And look, it's not your fault. Again, we have just been brought up in a society and a culture where we only see what is best. We only see the good side. It's really eye-opening and actually very comforting to see some big names in culture speaking about mental health, talking about their downfalls, talking about where they've made mistakes, being vulnerable, sharing themselves, because it gives others the opportunity to also open up. So as we go through life and we stop ourselves from doing what we know is in our hearts to do because of what this person would say, because of what this person would think, because of the way in which I would look, I would sound. You can add in your own story. If you allow those things to get in the way of what you're here for, consider that pride has become much bigger than the creator that created you. And again, it's okay. This isn't for you to now make yourself wrong. It's just now for you to be mindful for. How can I take new actions on? And how can I now be responsible and take ownership of where I'm at? Better yet, if you want to go to the source, what truth am I standing on? The truth that you're standing on is going to give you the ground upon which you walk. So if you stand on the truth of the world, it's going to be very murky and very quicksand ground. You may think it's solid only for something to be said, and now what seems so solid becomes a sinkhole. So what truth are you standing on? These three things, from my perspective, are the three things that hold us back from humans for being open to ask for help. The stories and the narratives that we go through. I just forgot the other one. Stories and the narratives that we go through. The fear and the judgment that we walk through in life. See, like even right there, I got in my head, I better remember what they are. No, it doesn't matter, because even if I lost you, it's okay. You're not supposed to be here. And 3, pride. Those 3 things, if we really don't bring intentionality into the picture, they're going to hold us back from stepping into who we're here to be. Now, what is the impact? The impact of allowing these 3 downfalls, these 3 identity blockers, I call them, is it creates a completely different experience of life than what we're meant to experience. So just explore and take a look, and maybe you can see in reality in your life where you have narratives and stories, where you have judgment and fear, and where you have pride holding you back, boasting. See where those in your life right now you're being held back by. And the best place for you to look at is maybe there are things right now that you wish you would do, but for some reason you're afraid to take action on them. If you really get real and honest with yourself, more than likely somewhere in your life, it's because one of those 3 things, if not all of those 3 things, are in some sort of way coming into the picture. Now, this breaks relationships. Maybe some that are already created start to deteriorate because there isn't a deep level of trust built. Maybe you have a really close connection with others, but the moment that things start to get deeper into a much more impactful relationship, maybe you're looking to build something together. Maybe you're seeking for support because you're going through a challenging time in your life, but you're afraid to go to people. You now are breaking or deteriorating relationships. in this lack of connection because of your lack of authenticity and vulnerability, there is no way to actually build a powerful and meaningful relationship with others. There's no substance to them. They're shallow. And this is why, again, in the world of today, in this society that we're living in, so many relationships are just on the shallow end. They never go deep because we're afraid of being seen, of being open, of asking for help, seeking support. Another consequence of this lack of desire in seeking support, this lack of willingness to be seen, is we feel overwhelmed. Because of course, how could you not? There's so many moving parts. We live in such a busy world. How could you not feel overwhelmed? There are so many things that you could do. There's so many things that must get done. If you have to rely just on yourself to do it, you're not going to be able to get them done. And even if you do, you may find yourself on a quick highway to burnout because maybe, just maybe, the people that you're afraid to ask for help from have the perfect gifts to support you with them. But the fear of asking them is holding back their gifts from being granted to you. So be open and willing to ask for help. Step into a whole new world of possibility, one of connection, one of peace, one of trust. Create a whole new space in which you can actually realize, wow, I can have a new life. Otherwise, you may find yourself alone, overwhelmed, burned out, asking why are my projects not getting done? Why do I feel like nothing is ever complete? And even if I do get them done, why do I feel so burnt out and so unfulfilled? Because maybe you've been running on fumes for too long because you're afraid to ask for help. So now that we know what gets in the way, we know the impact that it creates. Now let's take a look at what could be put in place in order for you to now be able to move from a completely new place in a way in which you are a transformed human, stepping now on some bigger truths that actually give you the opportunity to not just seek support from others, but also experience a whole new level of relationship with others. And we start number one with truth. Truth. Now, truth for me is a very specific thing, and it does come down to the Bible. And this is where I spoke before about this relativity of be mindful of what truth you're standing on. You know, the Bible speaks very clearly about who we are. And here in this world of today, we can very easily trust that everything is happening for a greater good. If I can stand on those two grounds, on those two words, on that word, then I can trust that regardless of what I'm going through, it's going to turn out for the better. When I'm in connection with others, if let's say they're now not seeing me fully and I ask for help and they start making fun of me, maybe that person's not supposed to be in your life. Maybe that person has been in your life for too long. And again, this is all wisdom that you can gain from the Bible. Yes, there are other resources you can use for support. But the moment that we start to get into a my truth, your truth, and the moment that we start to now not see the lines as solid, but they start to blur, is the moment where we start to get in trouble. Because again, now we're living in a world where my 12-inch ruler is 1 inch shorter or longer than the person next to me. And imagine you're building a home and you have one architecture show up with a ruler that for his end, it says 12 inches. But the moment you measure it, you're like, actually, this is 10 inches. And he's like, what? No, it's 12 inches. You're like, no, I see that it's 12 inches, but when I measure it, it says 10. Imagine if that's the world in which we live. Imagine if that's the way in which we walk through life, where somebody's ruler was shorter or longer than the actual length of a ruler. It's a silly example, but you start to see the repercussions and the consequences of this. This is why it's so important to really start to question and ask for yourself, what is the truth? What is the truth around what you can do? What is the truth around life in general? What is the truth about who you're here to be? In that place, you start to experience a new level of boldness and again, asking for help, because that is the most important part. When we step away from the stories and the narratives and we step into the truth, then it makes life much, much more simpler for us to step into. Number two, acceptance. This goes right in line with number one. In fact, number one is the foundation of it all. Under number one, everything else lives, including the things that we spoke about that get in the way of being open to seek for support and help. But acceptance is understanding that You're human, and so are they. And in our humanness, people will make mistakes. In our humanness, not everybody will want to. In our humanness, we will be willing to be of support to others. In our humanness, there will be judgment. There will be doubt. There will be insecurity. That's okay. When we start to accept what is, we can start to step into what could be. Right in line with what I keep saying. It's the idea of the Chinese finger locks. You ever used them before? You put your fingers in, you try to pull it out. The more you pull out, the stronger it gets, the tighter the grip. Consider that. The more that we resist is the more that that grip will be bound onto you, the more that you will be living in bondage. But the more you can accept what is, the more that you can let go and be free. And this is why, as we step on the truth of the Bible, acceptance is one of those things that opens up everything else. Because again, we don't have to hold on to anything. Literally, we do not have to hold on to anything. If somebody makes fun of us, that's okay, we can let that go. If we fail at something, we feel like a failure, that's okay, we can let that go. If we've tried so much we don't see the results, that's okay, you can let that go. Because everything is always working out for good. As we step into a level of acceptance, you're going to experience a whole new level of being for yourself. You're not going to be tied into somebody else telling you that you look great. Your identity is not going to be tied into the validation of others, because you'll be living from a place of already being validated by the one that created you. And that creates a whole new level of peace. That creates a whole new level of presence. That creates a whole new level of you showing up without having to please somebody else. This is a good opportunity for somebody that finds themselves in being a people pleaser. Consider that you are seeking validation from others. And because you're doing so, you're never going to actually be accepted by everybody, because not everybody's going to love you. We see Kobe Bryant, Michael Jackson. We see all these people of high skill set that are mostly adored by others who also have haters. That's okay. Some people say that the magnitude of your success is actually given by the magnitude of your haters. That's a big statement. That means this also goes right in line with what Abraham Lincoln says. If you stand for nothing, you'll be on your knees for anything. So you got to stand for something. You got to actually make a bold stance for your beliefs, for who you are. And again, in order to make things simple and easy, just trust on who the Bible says you are. It makes life so much more simple. In this level of being, you can start to understand yourself in a completely new way. Which brings us into the number 3. The third thing that really creates this whole thing in its entirety, and it's humility. To be humble allows us to trust in what is. To be humble allows us to be in a place of knowing that who we are here to be is actually who God tells us we are. This level of humility means that we're not looking for other people to tell us how good we are or what we should, quote unquote, do. This level of humility allows us to be in a place of trusting and release, knowing that the people around us will be who they'll be, but we can also be who we're here to be. We don't have to be the person in the quote unquote being the best, because sometimes chasing being the best, you lose who you are. And we see this very often. A lot of musicians, artists, actresses, people that are chasing what is quote unquote the best, only to find themselves depressed years down the road. It's no surprise. It's because when we try to please everybody, we're not going to be able to be ourselves. When we're not humble to be seen as the small person, we won't be able to step into the big things of life. We must be willing to understand that it takes time to build something worth something. It's not going to happen overnight. You're going to have to fail. This video, I'll look back on it 5 years from now and say, wow, how did you record this? How did people watch this? Did anybody watch this? But that's okay, because I'm not having to be this big person today. I can be humble enough to know that everybody at every point in time had to start in a small place. Even if it was the father or the son of a trust baby, as they call them, or whatever it may be. Humility is part of the equation. It is part of that idea that if we can really die to our flesh, and this is what Jesus talks about, when we can die to our flesh, the pride, the ego, we don't have to now try to do things in order to be validated by others. We're doing things because we actually have been created in the identity of Him. And this is what makes life in a completely new level of being. This is what creates a solid ground where you know that you as a human, you don't have to be validated by anybody, even your parents. No, they created you for sure, but they don't have to validate you. They can be a support to you, but they don't have to be the ones to tell you, you know what, go do that. Same thing with your friends. You're not seeking the validation from anybody, because when you can really tap in and you can really put all of these things into practice, when you put aside the pride, when you put aside the fear, when you put aside the narratives, when you step into humility, when you step into acceptance, when you step on truth, all of those things allow you to see who you really are. And if you move forward in life practicing these, you'll see for yourself that you'll be willing and open to ask for help. You won't be too big to be seen as somebody that needs support, because in fact, everybody at some point in time needs support. And the crazy thing is, you will see and notice that some people, the moment you ask for help, will actually open up and ask you for help, because they were too prideful in order to ask for help. They didn't want to be seen. But the moment that you showed vulnerability is the moment that they say, you know what? I also need help. We see it all over the place. All of these movie stars, all of these artists, they're afraid. But the moment that they are vulnerable, they will step forward. So be the bold one. Be the one that takes action. Be the one that puts down the pride and steps into humility. Be the one that actually accepts who you are, gets away from the narratives, gets away from the fears, and start to see the way in which the people around you start to shift. So if you find value in this, and if you see that this is something that could be of support to somebody else, share it with them. If you want to get more information like this and just go throughout the journey of life together, go ahead and follow. Appreciate your time, and I look forward to seeing you again in the very near future. God bless.